I never expected her to remember my name, let alone the way I take my coffee. That was probably the first thing that unsettled me. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to make me pause longer than usual at her kitchen counter. I've been coming over to her house for years because of Samir. We were roommates in college until he moved back home last year. I didn't have much reason to visit anymore, but sometimes I still stop by on my way from work. Mostly out of habit, I guess. Or maybe because my own apartment felt a little too quiet most nights. That evening wasn't special. Just rain threatening outside. My phone sitting face down on the table, 3 half-typed messages I already knew I wouldn't send. She noticed that too, I think. Not the messages themselves, just the way I kept picking up the phone and putting it back down. Still no reply. She asked casually, pouring coffee into a chipped mug I didn't remember leaving there. I shrugged. Wasn't really expecting one. She didn't push. That was her way. Just a small nod. Then she slid the mug toward me like it was routine. Like I belonged there more than I probably did. Samir wasn't home. Late shift again. That had become normal lately. Me sitting at the counter while she finished small chores. Both of us pretending it wasn't slightly unusual. I noticed things I probably shouldn't have. The way she tucked loose hair behind her ear when she was thinking. How she leaned her hip against the counter instead of sitting, like she didn't plan to stay long, but always did. Tiny things. Once, when our eyes met a second too long, she smiled quickly and asked if I wanted sugar. I don't even take sugar. Long day, she said. Just long, yeah. She laughed softly. Not amused. Exactly. More like she understood without needing details. That laugh lingered in the room even after she turned back to rinse a spoon. I folded a napkin into smaller and smaller squares without realizing it. She glanced at my hands, then back at my face, but didn't comment. That silence somehow felt kinder than advice. Truth is, I didn't have many people checking in on me these days. Work was polite but distant. Friends were busy building lives that didn't always include late-night coffee conversations. Loneliness, when it came, wasn't loud. It showed up in things like eating dinner standing up or scrolling contacts just to prove they were still there. She never asked heavy questions, just small ones. Did I sleep okay? Was the new project stressful? Had I eaten anything besides instant noodles? The kind of care that sneaks up on you. And yeah, I noticed her too. Not in some dramatic, forbidden way. Just awareness. The way you become aware of warmth when you've been cold a while. At one point, she caught me staring, or almost staring. I flicked my eyes toward her hands instead, pretending I'd been watching the steam from her mug. Something on my face, she asked lightly. No, just thinking. Dangerous hobby, she said. We both smiled, then let the silence stretch. Comfortable, but charged in a quiet way neither of us named. When I finally left, the rain had started. She stood by the door longer than necessary, arms folded loosely, like she might say something else. She didn't. I got home, changed, tried not to replay the evening. Failed, obviously. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from her. Hey, random question. Are you free tomorrow night? I realized there's something I've been meaning to tell you. Probably should have said it sooner. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, thumb hovering, not typing yet, mostly wondering why my chest suddenly felt too full for such a simple text. I almost didn't go the next night. I typed sure 3 different ways before sending it, each version sounding either too eager or too distant. Eventually I just wrote, yeah, what time? Which felt safely neutral. She said to come by after dinner. Samir would be out again. That detail sat with me longer than I expected. When I arrived, the house looked the same as always, porch light humming faintly, shoes lined up by the door, the faint smell of cardamom drifting from inside. Ordinary. Almost aggressively ordinary, like nothing significant could possibly happen there. She handed me tea instead of coffee this time. Figured you might need something calmer, she said. You looked wired yesterday. I always look wired. Not always. That small correction made me glance at her. She didn't elaborate, just wrapped both hands around her own mug, eyes briefly following the steam. We talked about harmless things first, work, the weather pretending to cool down, Samir's latest plan to switch jobs again. But there was a carefulness underneath it, like both of us knew we hadn't gotten to the real reason yet. Finally she sighed, not dramatic, just tired. I probably shouldn't have asked you to come, she said. It's complicated, because I'm your son's friend. That's part of it. A pause. And because I forget sometimes that I'm not just me anymore. I'm someone's mother first. People expect that to mean certain things. I didn't rush to respond. Honestly, I was busy imagining how this might look from the outside. Neighbors noticing. Samir joking about it, until it stopped sounding like a joke. The quiet math of our ages hanging in the background. Wrist didn't shout. It whispered. She told me, almost casually, that her divorce had been finalized 2 years ago. No big story attached. Just a fact, delivered like mentioning a dentist appointment. Funny thing, she added, eyes on the mug, loneliness doesn't show up how you expect. It's not dramatic. It's more like realizing nobody noticed you changed your haircut. I nodded a little too quickly. That landed close. Silence followed, but not awkward. More like shared weather. At one point, she asked if I could help reach a storage box from the top shelf. Nothing heavy. Still, when I stepped close, I became very aware of how small the kitchen suddenly felt. Her shoulder brushed my arm. Probably accidental, yet neither of us stepped back immediately. My brain did that annoying thing where it fast-forwards possible futures, Samir finding out. Me pretending nothing ever happened. Or worse, losing both of them over something we hadn't even defined. I set the box down. She thanked me quietly. We ended up sitting side by side at the table, tea cooling between us. No urgent conversation, just occasional glances, the ticking wall clock louder than usual. I don't know why I texted you, she said eventually. Maybe I just wanted someone who already knew me before everything changed. That stayed with me. Probably more than it should have. Maybe because it felt like being chosen without pressure. Like someone saw me not as a phase or convenience, but as continuity. I don't know why that moment stuck. Maybe because it felt like someone finally noticed I was still here. When I got up to leave, she reached out lightly, brushing a speck of tea dust from my sleeve. A small, almost absent gesture. But she didn't pull her hand away right away. And when I looked at her, she held the gaze a second longer than before. Not saying anything, just letting the quiet do its work. I told myself I'd give it a few days before coming back. Space felt sensible, healthy even, but routines have a way of bending when they've already started to change. Samir texted midweek asking if I could drop off a book I borrowed. Nothing unusual, except when I arrived, he wasn't there, called into an extra shift last minute. She opened the door like she'd half expected me anyway. "Oh, you," she said, then smiled in that small, careful way. "Come." He just left. I almost handed over the book and left. That was the smarter version of me. The one that slept better, didn't overthink harmless things. But she'd already stepped aside, and somehow I was inside again, shoes lined up beside the familiar pairs. Different mood this time. Quieter. Not tense exactly, just aware. She was sorting laundry at the dining table. Methodical folding, precise edges. I offered to help mostly so I'd have something to do with my hands. We worked without much talking. Fabric sliding against fabric. The hum of the ceiling fan. Ordinary sounds doing a lot of emotional heavy lifting. At one point, she laughed softly. If Samir saw this, he'd never let us hear the end of it. That landed strangely. A reminder. Boundary lines sketched lightly, but unmistakably. I hesitated. Maybe we shouldn't make it a thing he'd notice. She stilled for half a second, then resumed folding. "Exactly," she said. Neutral tone. Too neutral. After that, something pulled back between us. Not coldness, more like caution settling in. I caught myself monitoring where I stood, how long eye contact lasted. Silly details that suddenly mattered. And yet, closeness has its own gravity. Later, while she reached for high shelf again, I stepped in automatically. Same small kitchen. Same too short distance. This time she didn't brush past quickly. Just lingered, like neither of us knew the polite choreography anymore. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yeah." "What do you think this is? Us talking like this? You coming over?" I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because the honest answer had too many unfinished edges. "I don't know," I said finally. "And I don't want to assume something you don't." Her expression softened, but also sadder. Hard to read. Good, she murmured. Assumptions complicate things. A car door slammed outside. We both glanced toward the window instinctively. Samir. Neighbor. Didn't matter. The moment tightened anyway. When our eyes met again, we were closer than before. Not intentional. Just incremental steps. No one tracked. Her hand rested on the counter near mine. Not touching. Almost. My brain started that fast loop again. Consequences, explanations, the fragile normalcy we might crack. But underneath all that, the simple awareness of her breathing, steady but slightly shallow. I thought she might step back. She didn't. Neither did I. For a second, maybe less, it felt like the room leaned inward. Like something quiet but irreversible was about to happen. She parted her lips slightly. I probably did too. Then she exhaled, slow, controlled, and shifted just enough to break the alignment. Tea, she asked, voice careful again. Yeah, tea sounds good. But as she turned toward the kettle, her fingers brushed mine. Not accidental this time. Just brief. Testing. Or maybe saying goodbye to a moment we both understood, but weren't ready to keep. A few days passed without seeing her. Not planned, just life filling the space. Work stretched late. Samir actually home for once, my own apartment suddenly louder with distractions I'd been avoiding. Still, the absence had weight. Like skipping a step on stairs you didn't realize you'd memorized. Then she texted, going for a walk. Needed air. You around. Simple enough. Neutral enough. I said yes before overthinking it. We met 2 streets over, near that small park nobody really uses after sunset. The kind with a bench that always feels slightly damp, even when it hasn't rained. She was already there, hands in her jacket pockets, gaze somewhere past the streetlights. Hey, she said. Hey. We started walking without deciding to. Slow pace. No rush to fill the silence. I saw you with someone yesterday, she said eventually. Casual tone, but too carefully casual. Oh, co-worker. She needed help with a project. She nodded once. Looked ahead. Didn't ask more. But something tightened in her shoulders. And I realized, not dramatically, just quietly, that I didn't like that distance creeping in. Not after how easily we'd fallen into these small routines. You don't have to explain, she added. Actually, you probably shouldn't. That sounds like you mind. I didn't say that. Pause. Footsteps on gravel. A dog barking far away. I guess she exhaled. Sometimes I forget the obvious things. Like you having a whole life that doesn't orbit my kitchen counter. There it was. Not jealousy exactly. More like fear of misplacing boundaries. Or maybe guilt for even noticing. I stopped walking. She took another step before realizing, then turned back. You matter, I said. The words came out simpler than I intended. That's not imaginary. Her eyes flickered, surprise, maybe relief, maybe both. But also caution. You're my son's friend, she said softly. And I'm old enough to know how quickly good intentions get complicated. That sounds like you're already assuming the complication. Because I feel it, she replied, barely above a whisper. Silence again. Heavier this time, but not hostile. Exposed. Like standing without a jacket in weather you thought you understood. We ended up sitting on that slightly damp bench. Not touching. Close enough to feel warmth, though. She rubbed her palms together slowly. A nervous habit I hadn't noticed before. I didn't expect you, she said. Not like this. I thought loneliness just meant adapting. Becoming efficient at being alone. And now I catch myself looking for your car. A faint, self-conscious smile. That's new. Slightly terrifying. I swallowed. Because I've been doing versions of the same thing. Checking my phone for her name, inventing reasons to pass by. Neither of us said that part out loud. You should probably step back, she added after a moment. Before this becomes something neither of us can explain easily. Probably true. Sensible. Mature. And yet neither of us stood up. Streetlight glow softened her face. She looked tired, but open in a way I hadn't seen before. Walls lower, not gone. I shifted slightly closer. Not touching. Just closer. If stepping back is the right move, I said carefully, why does it feel like losing something? She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, steady, searching, and the quiet between us held one unfinished question neither of us seemed brave enough to ask. After that night at the park, I expected something to shift, not dramatically, just enough to make things clearer. Instead, things went quiet. Not the comfortable, quiet we'd settled into before. This one had edges. I stopped dropping by as often at first, partly to give her the space she'd hinted at. But then I noticed she wasn't reaching out either. No casual texts. No random "did you eat?" messages. Even Samir mentioned she'd been keeping busy, reorganizing closets that didn't need reorganizing. It shouldn't have bothered me as much as it did. One evening I passed their street on purpose, told myself it was just a shortcut. Her porch light was off, curtains drawn, nothing unusual, yet I kept walking slower than necessary, like the house might explain itself if I gave it time. A few days later, Samir said something offhand while we were grabbing lunch. Mom's ex called again. Wants to meet. Close your stuff, I guess. He said it casually, scrolling his phone, but it landed heavier than it should have. I didn't even know they were still in contact. That explained the distance. Maybe. Or maybe I was just filling blanks with whatever hurt least. I replayed our last conversation too many times. The bench, the unfinished question, the almost step forward neither of us took. Had I pushed too close? Not close enough. Hard to tell when nobody actually says the rules out loud. Work became convenient camouflage. Longer hours. Extra projects. People assumed ambition. Really, it was avoidance. Once or twice, I started typing a message. Hey, everything okay? Delete. Haven't seen you around. Delete. Miss talking to you. Definitely delete. Because what right did I have to say that? And what if she'd already decided stepping back was the safer story? Still, habits don't disappear instantly. I catch myself looking for her car when passing the neighborhood, checking my phone late at night, imagining simple scenes, tea cooling between us, her dry little observations about nothing important. Hope has a quiet way of lingering even after logic clocks out. Then last Friday, I actually saw her. Briefly. Grocery store parking lot. She was with a man I didn't recognize, older than me, younger than I'd pictured her ex, laughing at something she said. Comfortable. Familiar. She noticed me too. A small wave. Polite. No invitation to come over, no lingering eye contact. Just acknowledgement like acquaintances do. Emotional whiplash is subtle. 1 second you think something meaningful exists, the next it feels like you imagined it for entertainment. I went home and sat with my phone longer than usual. Drafted another message. This one's simpler. If you ever want to talk again, I'm around. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Didn't send it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. That night, I drove past the park where we'd sat. The bench was empty, slightly damp under the streetlight, exactly where we'd left whatever almost happened. A week passed after the grocery store moment. Long enough for the awkwardness to settle into something almost routine. I kept busy, kept quiet, kept telling myself the pause was probably permanent. Then, one evening, I found myself turning onto her street without planning it. No dramatic music in my head, no sudden courage, just a tired kind of honesty. Avoiding it hadn't made anything clearer. Her porch light was on this time. I almost stayed in the car, engine idling, hands resting on the wheel longer than necessary, because knocking meant risking whatever fragile normal we'd managed to keep. Still, I got out. The knock itself was softer than I intended, like I was giving her an easy way not to hear it. But she did. When she opened the door, she looked surprised first, then something else. Relief, maybe quickly smoothed over. Hey, she said. Hey. No invitation at first. Just both of us standing there, cool air slipping between sentences we hadn't formed yet. I didn't want to assume you needed space forever, I said. Voice steady enough, though my hands had quietly folded together. But disappearing didn't feel honest either. She nodded slowly, stepped aside. Gourmet, just for a minute. Kitchen again. Familiar, but different somehow. Like revisiting a place after an argument you never finished. She poured water, not tea or coffee. Practical. Neutral. I met with my ex, she said after a moment. Straight to it. Nothing dramatic. Just unfinished conversations. Okay. I needed to know whether I was holding on a history or just afraid of new complications. That word again, complications. But softer now, less defensive. I leaned against the counter, careful distance. And, and I realized avoiding you wasn't protecting anyone. It was just postponing clarity. Silence. The ticking clock louder than before. I don't want to make your life messy, she added. You're younger. You have options that don't come with this much context. That's my decision, I said quietly. Not yours to pre-filter. Her shoulders eased slightly. Not all the way. I miss talking to you, she admitted. More than felt reasonable. Same. We both let that sit. No dramatic confession layered on top. Just fact. I don't know exactly what this becomes, she continued. Friendship, something else, or just a chapter we handled carefully. But pretending it's nothing, that didn't work. I exhaled, tension I hadn't named finally loosening. I'm not asking for guarantees, I said. Just honesty, even if that honesty changes later. She studied my face for a second, checking, maybe for hidden expectations. Then a small smile appeared. Not triumphant, just relieved. That sounds manageable, she said. Our hands ended up close on the counter again. This time, she let her fingers rest lightly against mine. Not dramatic, just contact. Warm, steady, real. No ruse, no grand declaration. Just her quiet, almost shy. Okay. And me, matching her tone. Okay. Tom didn't rush after that night. It settled. Weeks turned into something steadier. Not dramatic, not fragile either. Just two people figuring out how to exist in the same orbit without over-explaining it. I didn't start coming over every evening again. That would have felt like rewinding instead of moving forward. But some mornings before work, I'd stop by. 8:47 a.m. became our accidental checkpoint, the time I commute naturally past her street, the time her kitchen usually smelled like tea. She still made it the same way. Cardamom, slightly too hot to sip right away. And she'd always ask if I wanted black coffee instead, like she hadn't memorized the answer months ago. Tea's fine, I'd say. It usually was. Samir noticed eventually, of course. Not in a confrontational way. Just a raised eyebrow once, a joking, you two run a secret breakfast club now. Neither of us over-explained. He seemed comfortable enough leaving it there. That mattered more than a formal conversation. Life around us stayed imperfect. Work deadlines. Her occasional late-night worries about family stuff. My own uncertainty about where my career was heading. But the loneliness that used to sit heavy in ordinary moments softened. Not gone, just shared. We started walking again, sometimes. That same small park. Same slightly damp bench. Except now the silence, there didn't feel like a question mark. More like punctuation, a comma, maybe. Something that let conversation breathe. One evening she showed up with both tea and a small thermos of black coffee. Backup plan, she said. Growth. I laughed harder than the joke deserved. She looked pleased anyway. There wasn't a dramatic, we're together now conversation. No milestone announcement. Just gradual adjustments. A spare mug that stayed at my apartment. Because she'd left it there, her texting me grocery lists when I was already out, me fixing a loose cabinet hinge without being asked. Tiny integrations. Once sitting on that bench, she slipped her hand into mine mid-sentence like it had always belonged there. Neither of us paused the conversation. That felt significant in a quiet way. I used to think peace meant being alone, she admitted that day. And now I think it just means not having to brace yourself all the time. I understood that without asking follow-ups. Things aren't cinematic. We still overthink sometimes. Still give each other space when moods dip. Still occasionally laugh about how unlikely this would have sounded a year ago. But the warmth stuck. This morning, actually, she handed me tea at exactly 8:47 again. Steam fogging the window, her hair still slightly damp from a rush shower. Ordinary scene. Comfortably so. You staying for dinner later? She asked, casual. Yeah, thought I would. No hesitation on either side. And as I left, she gave that same small smile from months ago. Except now, it didn't carry uncertainty. Just familiarity. Chosen quietly again and again. Funny how something that started as a pause eventually became rhythm. Sometimes I still think about that empty bench, that almost question we never fully asked. And I realize maybe we didn't need to. We answered it by staying.